Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this evening's exciting edition of BookBytes. Once again, we've been traversing a series of, power outages, but nothing can be more special than having a way to not get down, which is reading some incredible reads in this evening. I've just completed and I'm looking forward to introducing and having a beautiful chat with the author of Bantu Knots, Aquella publication, and we'll be speaking just now to Lebo Mazibuko. Now, I've had such an entertaining time getting through this book, and I love when books focus on young adults and, viewing the world through their eyes as they prepare and present their own opinions of the world. And what's interesting is you seeing the world through the eyes of young Naledi who wants to trade her Bantu knots for Nontletema's hair, Nontletema being the dark and lovely brand ambassador or one of the models. She grows up in Pimble, Soweto with her strict grandmother, Mama Nora. During the day, she lives vicariously through the characters in Dende Street, and at night she recites Bible verses with Mama. Meanwhile, her mother, Deneo, is out chasing the blessed lifestyle. When Lady starts university away from Mama's watchful eye, there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot that she experiences, there's a sense of adventure. And we're going to delve into and pick author Lebo Mazibuko's brain on her writing process and what it was like to develop this fascinating and entertaining story. Welcome to the show, Lebo, and what a wonderful opportunity to have to chat to you this evening.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for inviting me.
I can imagine that you had huge fun developing the character of Naledi because she's so sometimes unassuming, but like she drops these bombs. She's got these thought processes. I love, getting to know characters that are so involved in experiencing the world around them. Tell us about your writing process and developing this character of Naledi.
I think I had to draw from my own life experiences. I'm a girl who grew up in Soweto, and my grandmother lived on Dende Street. And it was this crazy world with different characters. So I had to go back into my own history, my own childhood, and
Right.
try to see the world from that point of view, in carving out Naledi's story. And even with her varsity journey, I was fortunate enough to study arts, to study drama. So putting her in the environments that I'm very familiar with um, definitely helped. And giving her layers and making her relatable and real.
I definitely get a sense of that. And I mean, when you talk of the choices that she makes, she's able to, she's got the strong female character of a grandmother who's given her the structure in her life, which is fabulous on the one hand. And even beyond that, you can see her strength of character emerging by the choices that she makes, even though she has these kind of, she grapples with perhaps a sense of conscience and her own ability to, I mean, I loved how she's able to do that as a young person. Like when you talk about being in the arts field, it's considered sort of like unusual. How do
Yeah.
you study to get a job? Are you going to get a job out of the arts? This is what we deal with in our
Mm,
survivalist communities. Speak to us
yeah.
about that duality and as a young person showing so much of strength of character.
I think what helped Naledi mostly is growing up around two women who are extremely, like, they're polar opposites. Dineo is her own kind of woman, and Mama Nora is her has her very strong beliefs. And I think that brings a balance into Naledi's world. So she's not in a box, even though Mama Nora tries to keep her in this, within these parameters, and trying to give her a certain view of the world.
Right.
She's able to break through that. And I think it is, to some extent, her mother's influence and the people and the different characters that she brings into Naledi's life. It is also her friends, and in those small opportunities where she gets to leave the house and meet characters like Lolo, the guy next door, or her small interactions with other people outside of her household. It helps broaden her mind. And I think one thing that helped do that was seeing Annika, especially. This is a girl who Annika is a character she's of a different race. And we've never seen a lady because she goes to an all black school in the township. So this is her first experience outside of the township. This is her first experience with a white girl and having this conversation with her and seeing that, oh, okay, so life outside of the township is sort of different. People experience things differently, and I can dream beyond my everyday. I can aim
Right.
for something much bigger. You know, Annika's a girl in university, and hearing Annika talking about university, hearing Annika talking about the arts, hearing Annika who is so passionate about life, it gives her a different perspective that she's never really had before.
And I love how she takes in these experiences because they allow her this stretch of imagination. Because, I mean, while Anika's experience is removed from the township, within the township, I know that we read that there's these pockets of experiences. So, for example, she has this experience of toxic masculinity, but then there's
Yeah,
also this boy next door who is actually where her real formation of trust happens with a man,
yeah,
or with a male friend, let me say. And that was a really beautiful aspect to the story because you've got them parallel, the toxic masculinity, which is a very much a part of our society, and
yeah,
Lolo, who's genuinely, concerned and caring, even though he's a guy's guy and he also succumbs to his levels of temptation without giving up, much of the story.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, watching her experiences in tandem is fascinating in so many
yeah.
ways,
I think it's
layered in so
important.
many ways.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to have balance, because that is what life is. We can talk about a lot of the bad things that we experience in our everyday, but we cannot take away from the good influences, the small inspirations, the small moments of hope, those glimmers of hope that we have every day. And those are the things that keep us going. And I wanted to give that to Naledi, that it's not a tragic story. There is hope,
Right.
and that's the thing that fuels her. That's the thing that keeps her moving in the midst of everything. Whether she experiences abuse, whether she experiences violation, there's still hope. There's something that always has to keep us moving as human beings.
It also impressed upon me this idea that, I mean, as much as there's so many instances of sisterhood, and the strength that we take from each other, from our grandmothers or our mothers, whether those decisions made are wrong or right, how we might judge them, from entrepreneurs in the community, women entrepreneurs, from our friends at school. So there's that wonderful bubble that we create of sisterhood. But there are certain things that just remain a secret. There's certain things we seem to always not be able to express. There's certain instances you might think she would tell her girlfriends and she's not able to.
Mm,
We all can identify with that, young and old. And that
mm.
was very hot, sort of very touching, those moments.
Yeah, it's the environments that we grow up in. There's a lot of shame that is attached to our bodies. There's a lot of taboo subject matter that we can't really talk about. And even though she's in an environment where she's allowed, for the first time in her life, she's given room to express herself. She's given room to say whatever is on her mind. There's still that little girl inside of all of us that says, this part of you is something shameful, and that kind of creeps up on us. um and these are traumas, I think, childhood traumas that we also have to sort of work through. And I was trying to get this across with Naledi's story, that it's a process to get to a point where you can be really comfortable in your own skin, to really be comfortable with bearing your scars and opening up about certain things. It's a process, and yes, you might have support system and support structures, but it's not always easy to just speak, especially with issues such as rape. There's a lot of women who you would think would talk about it, but even the most educated, even the most opinionated of us, these are things that we're still uncomfortable with talking about, even with our closest friends.
And I find when you talk about sexual violence in particular, I mean, if you're walking down the street and your pocket is picked and you lose your purse, you'd say, this happened. My purse got stolen. But when a woman is raped, she steps back and thinks twice about sharing for a number of reasons. But unfortunately, some of it is a certain amount of self-blame. Will people blame me first? So it's no longer a crime was done to me, like my pocket was picked. Women start to self-blame
Yeah.
first, and I think that's the greatest tragedy in working through such violent crime against
Yeah.
women.
And this is something that Naledi has been warned about throughout her life. And I think it happens to the best of us, where at times we think our families, our parents, they try to protect us, but in them trying to protect us, it's almost as if trying to teach you how to not get violated, trying to teach you how to not get raped, as if that also says it's your fault to some degree if you slip up in this certain area. And this is something that happens with Naledi. She is taught how to behave to avoid this certain situation. So when it does eventually happen to her, she takes on that blame, like, oh, I did something wrong. I wasn't supposed to have been there in the first place. I wasn't supposed to have been drinking. I wasn't, without giving too much away with her. But
Right.
yeah, she takes it on because it's almost like a psychology that's built into us from a very early age as girls, how to dress, um, how to interact with men or boys, how to suppress our feelings, how to suppress your sexual feelings towards the opposite sex. It's so you have these things in the back of your mind, you grow up with them, and when you find yourself in a situation like that, it's difficult now to separate yourself and those teachings and and actually understand that no, it's not my fault, or I did nothing wrong. You feel like there's this
Right.
code that you've, or these as rules
These
that you've broken.
expectations. Right.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I thought that the themes, were brought through very relevantly. Another obviously important one leads us back to your title, and this concept of hair and identity, and I mean how Naledi transcends that. First, living the expected identity, doing exactly what she's regulated to do, and what hair means to her when she takes perhaps a rebellious decision at some
Mm.
point. Speak to us about this concept of hair and identity, which is such a significant and relevant consideration throughout our society and throughout, generations. I love how you've captured that through her story.
Yeah, I think because hair has always been this crown, our crown as women. It when your hair is not growing okay, you feel you're not so beautiful, or when you don't look a certain way. I know with Black girls, we've tried to keep our hair straight for the longest time. So if you hear, and our hair is naturally coily, so we fight against this natural way of our hair growing out. We want it to be slick, we want it to be straight, we want to be beautiful, we want to show off our femininity, and eventually eventually when Naledi peels all these layers off, what society says is beautiful, or what society says a woman should look like. She starts to kind of come into her own, and understanding who she is. She defines for herself who she wants to be and how she wants to be seen in the world. And I think this is something we all have to do for ourselves. We've been taught, how to look, how to dress, how to present yourself to the world, who you should be, how you should speak. Uh, a lady carries herself in a certain way. A lady behaves in a certain manner, whether it's in the corporate space, whether it's at church, whether it's at home. There's a way in which we as women are expected to present ourselves. Even going beyond the hair. How you dress, how you speak is very important. But yeah, and I think for Naledi, being around girls who break the rules, who especially a character like Itu, who is a feminist, a person who believes and who does not even believe in Christianity and is opposed to all these Western ideas. It also helps Naledi confront some of these belief systems and to ask herself, do I really believe in this, or am I just taking on what has been taught to me
Right.
from a young age? Yeah, so it's really about trying to understand yourself and coming into your own as a woman and finding your voice. And I think here in the story is sort of a metaphor. It's a big metaphor for her, but it's something that we as women in everyday society, we've been trying to unpack for ourselves for years. I don't even think we're there yet.
Well, it's a very big theme that carries through, it got me thinking, because
Yeah,
society decides, as you say, for women, what it means to be attractive. And
yes,
there's almost this kind of drive to validate ourselves by virtue of that list of expectations, and
yeah,
what it means to be attractive, and what it means to be worthy of being the perfect woman, the virtuous woman, a beautiful
yes,
woman. And all of those layers are quite heavy on the shoulders of a teenage girl who's trying to assert her own identity within these bounds of what Mama Nora concerns as good moral behavior,
yeah,
which is a great starting point as a structure. But as long as fear becomes the sort of basis for which she teaches, that's when I wouldn't say rebellion, but the opening start for the questions that Naledi
yeah.
has. I love the way, you bring all of that together as well. I want to go back to the structure, because what I found really special was your title, your chapter titles. As a writer myself, just looking back and saying, well, it's so easy to go chapter one, chapter two, or get some fancy title, but the significance of your chapter titles, drawing from your Setswana, sort of understanding, and bringing in these. I want you obviously to. For me, it was very special and very poetic that you've done this. And I'm very happy that while you have the original indigenous title, that you've got the transliteration or the translation. For me, for lesser known people like myself, please speak to me about your choice of titles and the significance of bringing the indigenous into to complete your text, because it really does complete your text.
Yes, the whole story is about this young girl who's coming into her own. And as we were speaking about identity, there's a lot of things that are passed down onto us about how a woman should be, how a woman should carry herself, how a woman should behave. And a lot of these chapter titles are things that are drilled into us as
Right.
Black girls. It's things that you hear a lot. I try to use all the languages, all the African languages, and popular idioms and proverbs that we
The
hear
grandmother's
our
past.
grandparents tell us as young
Mhm.
girls. Some of them are songs. Um, I know there's one where I use a wedding song. It says Fiela Fiela Moyana. Basically, this it's a wedding song that we sing to the bride, saying you must sweep, so that keep your house in order, keep your house clean. A woman must make sure that her, your Proverbs 31 kind of women, and it's almost like instructions are still given to us throughout our journeys as we become women at every stage. And my question is, when do we get to decide who you want to be? When do you get to decide to set the rules for yourself? Because there's this, it's almost like a handbook that's given to every young girl, and I think it's across cultures.
Right.
There's this specific handbook, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're from a very cultural household, Zulu cultural household. There's just an instruction or a manual for women, even from the time we are born. I feel like a lot of us are almost trained to be wives, or are little girls who are wives in training, so that the moment you become a wife, you know how to keep a husband, because that's the main thing. Not
Right.
necessarily about having a happy home, or being a happy wife, but it's how to keep this man,
Right.
which we see play out throughout Naledi's life. And her grandmother is almost like the gatekeeper of patriarchy, this figure who gives her the step-by-step manual, so that she doesn't mess it up as a girl who is becoming a woman. Yeah, so these titles are basically things that we've been hearing, or I've been hearing, popular um proverbs, popular idioms that we hear growing up.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned, that grandmothers in general are the gatekeepers of patriarchy. It's not men that pass these laws down, it's our women, older
Mm,
women that are sort of bridled with the responsibility of passing down this handbook, whether it's an oral narrative or, this handbook is passed down. And I really thought it was special and significant that you documented these idioms, because I completely understand when my grandmother says things over the years. There's certain things that can't be translated from the traditional language of the elders. There's certain things that, as much as we want to make sense of in our language of understanding, which in my case is English, can never really carry the essence and the weight, perhaps, of
mm.
that patriarchal, traditional kind of energy. And it can be very problematic. It can be very problematic.
It,
Um,
it is
so
problematic. I think some of these things are what have inflamed this gender-based violence that we see in society. And I don't think gender-based violence is something that's new. I think it's we're talking about it a lot. And that's why it seems like it's so out of control. But this has been going on in secret for so many years. And
right.
women have been protecting men, um,
To
or
keep
their
things
husband's
together.
dignity, or the family's dignity. We don't speak about certain things. It's just that now women are bold and are brave enough to actually speak out and say, this is what's happening to me, or this is what has happened to me. So it kind of seems like it's out of control, but I just think we're speaking out more. That's why it seems more prevalent right now.
The dynamics have also changed because there's more financial independence and the opportunity to step back and reflect on a situation and say, I have an option, I have a
Yeah,
choice, and the kind of support structures. It still remains difficult, but I agree there is that kind of change of narrative.
yeah,
Above all, as much as Naledi experiences the weight of trauma from the previous generation, her observance of Mama Nora's anger as well. I mean, as a young child, she's extremely observant, and I think we socialize as women, as girl children, to already notice everyone's emotions so that we know how to navigate life without offending anyone, troubling anyone, causing any extra burden. We're all
Yeah.
socialized in that way from the beginning, and it shows in her character. So I think you have a beautifully rounded character. I really enjoyed watching her, grow and develop, and even grapple with her teachings and her choices, because I could identify with that in so many
Yeah.
ways. Um, what are your hopes for Naledi and her story of Bantu Knots? I mean, it's a new novel. How is it being received? Especially with younger readers, although I would recommend this for all ages.
I've been surprised at how young people, some of the readers are. Um, I've had some of my older readers pass it on to their nieces and nephews even. So that's been a pleasant surprise, because I do think it's a book for all generations. I think it's a good starting point, to get certain conversations going within our households, especially if you have a daughter, especially if you have a niece who's a teenager, or going into that adolescence stage. It's a
Right,
very confusing time, and I know as a young girl, I needed a soundboard. I needed somebody to talk to about certain things, and a lot of the times I felt lost, and I had to suppress a lot of trauma, a lot of my own emotions, and I think that was the one thing that pushed me to write this book was, let's get talking, let's have these intergenerational conversations, which are so important. So I hope people pass it on. I hope people don't, because I know sometimes as readers we can hoard books, so you're scared of lending a book to somebody. But I think this is one book that should keep moving within families.
right.
Give it to your nieces, give it to your neighbors, give it, I think it's a really great starting point, especially with certain conversations around relationships, around body, around sex. People are shy or a
I
bit
don't know how to
nervous.
broach the subject. Yes,
Exactly. So I think maybe saying, oh, when a lady is going through this or that, we could use those references to have these
right.
conversations. Yeah.
I think it really is. I mean, when we talk about generational trauma and like how you've managed to capture the generational gap and the bridges that they try to build between them, but we also have generational strengths to draw on, and that comes through as well. So thank you for writing a beautiful story, for allowing us a window into Naledi's world, and I look forward to reading more from your pen.
I thank you so much for reading it. I hope to bring more offerings. And I really hope to keep this conversation going. So thank you for bringing me onto your platform.
Absolutely. I think that audiences and viewers are definitely going to be looking out for this book and recommending it far and wide. So, once again, a wonderful evening, and we had a great time chatting and picking your brain on Bantu Knots.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And so, there you have it, author Lebo Mazibuko speaking about Bantu Knots, her fascinating, entertaining, and very significant novel. Until next week from us, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.